Another week, another Watch News Weekly. Some exciting stuff this week. Starting with the Kaws Audemars Piguet. Brooklyn-based artist Kaws. You guys all know him for his figurines. Of course, the most famous Kaws, the companion character, a skull and crossbones take on a famous rubber hose cartoon mouse, right? This watch brings something new. And I've always said one thing about Audemars Piguet. They don't cut corners. And this watch is the perfect example of not cutting corners. If you go back to the two past figurine-like concepts, which is going to be your Black Panther and your Spider-Man, one of the things you notice there is that the hands sort of obstructed the figurine itself, right? And a lot of effort and a lot of craftsmanship goes into creating those figurines. If you ever held one of those watches in person, looped it, and saw the intricate details of the figurines themselves, they're pretty amazing. But then you have the hands sort of covering it, right? The number one thing that stands out is the new peripheral time display, right? So what that allowed to do is show the figurine front and center without the hands actually obstructing it, right? Titanium hour and minute hands, they're sort of set on these roller guided gear wheels. So kind of reminds me of the Freak a little bit, to be honest with you. PVD bridges in the back. The ratchet wheel in the back has the famous X. Of course, the figurine itself, the little X's on the screws around the bezel, everything. Just attention to detail. The fact that it's sandblast titanium that sits on top of this sunburst titanium dial plate, and the chest reveals the tourbillon. It's like there, but it's not. Kind of makes it look, it's the heart of the figurine, if you will. Just AP did what AP does best. I'm a big fan. I've gotten some mixed reviews. I talked about it on my Instagram account the day that it revealed. And some mixed reviews, some people love it or hate it, and it may be one of those watches. I think it was the same with the Marble watches. Personally, I think AP knocked it out of the park. Of course, I am biased. Audemars Piguet is my favorite brand. Limited edition of 250 pieces, priced at about $225,000. And again, a situation where you're colliding worlds. Kaws is extremely collectible. Some of the auction results for some of the stuff are insane. He's an extremely popular artist, and you're bringing in, the world of collectibles or art collectors or figurine collectors into the world of watches. And therefore, the end result is pretty simple. It's more eyes and more potential buyers that you can bring in from one world into another, and vice versa. And speaking of combining two worlds, I had the privilege, actually this was 2 days ago, to go to Sotheby's. I got to privately preview the items going up in the Tom Brady auction. I got to hold the Les helmet that Tom Brady won his last Super Bowl, and the ball with which he surpassed 100,000 yards in passing, a record that I don't think will ever be beaten. And I also got to hold some of his personal watches, to include the piece Unique, the one that says Tom Brady. Now, Royal Oak, Tourbillon, guilloche, salmon dial, diamond markers, but what's most important about that watch, it actually says Tom Brady across the top with baguette diamonds, and the number 7 is with sapphires, obviously signifying his 7 Super Bowl rings, which I think is another record that would never be beat. But now, it's, of course, at the same time, I was holding some of his watch collection, and it was super eclectic, like a JPS Paul Newman Daytona next to the modern one-of-a-kind Tourbillon. You had Richard Milles, you had a ton of IWCs. No secret, he was an ambassador for IWC. And some of them actually have a goat engraved in the back. So these are his own Unique pieces. I think the opportunity in that auction for guys that love Tom Brady, love sports collectibles, and at the same time love watches, or vice versa, is endless. And I think this is probably, in my mind, one of the biggest two worlds colliding auctions that is going to take place. An opportunity that I got, and thank you, Sotheby's, for allowing me into that room, was absolutely amazing. And the watches are insane. Now, you always see these little posts on Instagram, and everybody follows Daniel Craig, i.e. James Bond, who somehow is being spotted wearing some kind of an Omega that nobody knows about. And people pay attention, and you get these zoom-in shots where you can kind of see the watch and not see the watch. But Omega introduced the Seamaster diver no date, right? There were 4 references introduced with a mix of materials. So no surprise, it's 42 millimeters, about 14 millimeters thick, stainless steel case. You have the crown at 3 o'clock, and you have the helium escape valve at 10 o'clock, right? The whole Michelin bezel comes in steel with a black aluminum insert with a white scale, or in grade 5 titanium with grain insert with the diving scale in positive relief. Now, the steel model has black aluminum dial with laser engraved wave-like patterns, steel and titanium model. Get a vertically brushed steel PVD coated dial. Case matching mesh bracelet with a folding clasp, a black or gray rubber strap. The black or gray rubber strap, $5,900. Mesh steel bracelet, $6,500. It's their competition to the no date sub. And while Rolex seemingly is the bigger flex, if you take the name off the dial and not pay attention. You look at the two watches side by side aesthetically, I think, especially the gray pieces, I think aesthetically beat the Rolex. Oddly enough, I absolutely love the mesh bracelet aesthetically, but I would still probably end up going with the rubber strap simply because anytime you have a bracelet, any kind of bracelet, whether it's mesh or whatever it might be, I feel like it always has taken away from the watch. And this is sort of that plain Jane sporty watch that's meant to be seen. So the rubber strap tends to disappear more than the mesh bracelet. So if I had to choose, most likely go with the rubber strap. Fairly priced too. So Collective Watch had Zenith do the Skyline CX edition for them. So basically, it's a limited edition of the Defy Skyline. And they're saying that this is a proper reworking of the Swiss brand's contemporary integrated bracelet watch, right? Again, it's based on a standard full-size Defy Skyline, 41 millimeter case, a screw-on display case back, screw-down crown, 100 meters water resistance, the usual bells and whistles, and entirely matte sandblasted finish. Matte silver gray dial featuring some of the small orange highlights, which I really like. The star motif has been rendered in a three-dimensional manner with sort of a radial gradient effect, if you will, right? Time on display, and it relocates the 1/10 of a second indicator to the 6 o'clock location. Retail price $12,300, limited to 200 pieces. Can I say that they wowed me? No. Do I think it's an aesthetically beautiful watch? Yes. Do I think that will sell like hotcakes and people will want them? Yes. But on the secondary. Panerai is reviving once again, right? Bringing back the Destro style to the Luminor and the Luminor Destro Otto Giami. I'm sure I mangled that as well. Now, of course, it draws inspiration from the Destro watches produced for the Italian Navy, Frogman back in the 1960s, and designed for left-handed divers to be worn on the right wrist while wearing another Panerai supply diving instrument such as a compass or a depth gauge on their left wrist, right? Not available online, and includes both a tan leather strap and a black rubber band, which is no surprise, priced at $8,100, which is a $500 bump, I think, over the right-handed equivalent. Panerai is sticking to its DNA. And again, maybe they're hoping to catch another wave of excitement by creating a short edition of left-handed watches, kind of like Rolex did. I know back in the day, the lefty Panerais were fetching buku premiums, but that was at the time where the production was a lot less. There were a lot more die-high Paneristi out there, and there was a huge hype. We're going back to probably 2005-06 era. People that like Panerais, people that are still die-high Paneristi, they will go for the left-handed model, even if they're right-handed, because as you know, the crown guards on Panerais, they tend to get pretty bulky, leaving pretty much a mark across your wrist. And I know this because I wore a ton of Panerai in my lifetime. Ulysse Nardin, the Net Vendi Globe, right? Again, they're back in the official timekeeping helm of the legendary Vendi Globe, single-handed, non-stop, non-assisted round-the-world sailing race. Yeah, I don't know how much you guys know about that race, but this is, it's renowned as the most grueling solo around-the-world race, and it happens every 4 years for a reason, because I can't imagine sailing the world by myself. Now, this is their second partnership with the race, so they released the most sustainable version of its diver net, right? Recycled fishing nets, use recycled carbon foil and nylofoil, right? There's everything about this watch is extremely green, and Ulysse Nardin was very conscious of that because, again, the event has to do with the seas, has to do with the oceans. 44 millimeters, 95% recycled steel container, right? Obviously, the signature X in the center, gray sunblasted dial, the power reserve indicator at noon, and the running seconds at 6 o'clock. I picked that in red and blue, which are the official colors of the race. There's a laser etching of the sailing course appears in the gray tinted sapphire caseback, so you can actually see the route that the boats take. Limited to 300, retail of $14,200. Again, reasonable as usual from Ulysse Nardin. Love the strap on this. Very difficult when you're gonna add loud colors into a watch, not to overdo it. And many brands have done it in the past to include the Ulysse Nardin, but here the red accents work and the bright red strap works just the same. Another big news is the legal battle over John Lennon's Patek Philippe reference 2499 that Yoko Ono gave to him on his 40th birthday. She purchased this double-signed 4th series 2499, one of just 349 made at Tiffany & Co. in New York. Gave it to him on his 40th birthday in 1980. And after Lennon was tragically murdered in December of that year, Ono kept the watch locked away at home until 2005. The story goes that Ono's driver Corral Carson, I believe was the guy's name, allegedly stole the watch. And then he used the $24.99 as collateral for a home loan, and the watch passed to his friend, Earthen G. I don't know how to pronounce that. At least that's how it was referred to in legal documents involving this watch. Who took the watch to Berlin, showed it to Oliver Hoffman, director of watches at digital auction house Auctionata. Now, Auctionata CEO Alexander Zak then reportedly tried to sell the watch without telling Yoko Ono, and Carson even signed an affidavit stating that the $24.99 has been gifted to him by Ono. At that point, Earthen G, spooked by the prospect of a lawsuit from Ono, doubled back, and Hoffman courted a private buyer called Mr. A, right? This man consigned a collection of watches valued at 600,000 euro at the time in order to pay for the $24.99. And after only a few months, he made the critical error of taking the watch to Christie's. The house then contacted, obviously, Ono's lawyer, which set in motion a spiral of legal proceeding to return it to her. Ono only realized the watch was missing after Christie's contacted her to verify its authenticity. And last week, there was another breakthrough in the case. Switzerland's highest court ruled that the watch is definitely Ono's and that it must be returned to her immediately. Now, some experts think it could potentially be the most expensive watch in the world, hammering for tens of millions, and I tend to agree. Look, this isn't just a Provenance play either. Don't forget, I mean, the $24.99 without ties to Lennon is still an incredibly valuable timepiece. And you've seen the auction results for all the variations of $24.99. Some would set humongous records. But if this thing were to go to auction, and the fact that it belonged to John Lennon and gifted to him by his wife, I mean, this. When I tell you if this ends up in auction, it will, no doubt in my mind, break all records. I think it would be an amazing opportunity for a collector to pick something like this up. I would love to be bidding on that, but certainly not a watch I would be able to afford anytime soon. With Hublot revealed the Big Bang Unico, Novak Djokovic, limited edition watch celebrating the legendary tennis player record-breaking 2023 season, during which he secured his 24th Grand Slam title. I like what they did here. The watch is very modern, somewhat avant-garde, the colors and the material, right? It's some sort of an epoxy resin, which is reinforced with quartz powder and glass. They have this new innovative composite material, which is epoxy resin reinforced with quartz powder and a glass veil fused with Djokovic's 25 head tennis rackets, dark blue polos, and 15 light blue polos from his 2023 season. So it's sort of like, if you're a memorabilia collector or a card collector, it's like sort of like game used memorabilia infused into a baseball card, right? It's kind of like the same concept, but now it's in the watch. Limited edition to 100 pieces, priced at $52,700. Lots of tennis fans out there that are going to want to get their hands on this watch, especially considering that his literal DNA is embedded into this watch from the stuff that he wore. And last but not least, I'm going to talk about Czapek Antarctique Purple, or an Arctic Purple Storm. I don't know what you want to call it. Same old watch, but I wanted to talk about this because of this dial, okay? It sets itself apart from its hand-varnished dial made by Medallion, their frequent partner when it comes to doing stuff like this. And it's like a gradient design, and it sort of like captures the mood and depth of a natural storm, right? Quoting Czapek, they said, sense of mystery and dynamic movement. I'm going to dumb that down to say this is just a really, really cool dial, right? There's no indices, just a minute track and a date window. The pricing is not confirmed. They're only making 18 of these. I would love to see that in person because you know what? That dial is indeed captivating and pulls you into the depth. No, it doesn't. It's a really cool dial, right? Dial front and center, the watch sort of disappears, at least based on the picture that I see. Would love to see this watch in person. How much would it be? And I don't know, but knowing them, they'll probably charge up for it, especially considering the fact that they're only making so few of them. With that said, we're going to finish this Watch News Weekly. If you lasted this long, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and I'll see you next week.